right, welcome back, and welcome to what we're calling Job One. This is where we're going to be discussing the skills gap here in Arizona, what happens when employers can't find workers in the state with the necessary skills to fill available jobs. It's happening around the country, and the conclusion is that a skills gap starts as an education gap. So we're here to highlight some solutions that are working to build a more skilled workforce in Arizona. Public-private partnerships are all the rage these days. They are working, programs that mentor students so that they know what an engineer, for example, really does on the job. Those are working. There are signs of real success here. A 2012 U.S. Chamber of Commerce report ranked Arizona #1 in entrepreneurial activity. But there are also challenges. The growing Hispanic population that is lagging behind whites in educational achievement, a theme of the day, as you know, as we've been talking about. How do you make sure they are not left behind, as an increasing number of jobs in the new economy require some post-secondary education? We're going to be discussing all that with our panelists. And then for the last 15 minutes of the program, I'm going to be talking with 3 mayors from Phoenix, Goodyear, and Mesa to get their ideas about what can work. I'm going to be joined today by 12 News anchor and reporter Kim Covington and Noticiero Telemundo Arizona News anchor Patricia Batres, who will be taking questions from the audience. This entire program is being streamed at educationnation.com, and at 12:30 we're going to be joined by the live 12 News audience. All of our Phoenix here, so let's get started. Let me introduce our panelists. Craig Barrett, he's the former CEO and chairman of the board of the Intel Corporation. There's no ding. Do you walk around, is there a ding usually over your head? Dun, 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 pretty much. That's what I think, right?
It's a copyright violation.
Is that right? I'm in trouble? I got Red Conger, president of the Americas for Freeport-McMoran. Eileen Klein, president of the Arizona Board of Regents, and Mike Madson. He's president of the Defense and Space part of Honeywell Aerospace. Welcome all. Let me just read you some basic statistics just from this morning. And the new jobs report that was out, unemployment rate fell to 7.5%. The unemployment rate for those without a high school education is 11.6%. The unemployment rate for college graduates is 3.9%. Need we say more? And it ranges in between high school, folks with high school diplomas, the unemployment rate 7.4%, and those with some post-secondary education, 6.4%. So those might be some no-duh statistics to a lot of people, but it says it right there. Education and the economy go hand in hand. So Craig, I want to start with you. You've thrown a lot of money into this. You've thrown a lot of energy into this. What is the Arizona education system, frankly, is the U.S. education system preparing students today for the 21st century job?
Well, obviously not. But before I get there, I need to correct you and some of your earlier comments today. And you kind of need a skunk at every garden party. First of all, you intimated that Basis Tucson, which is one of the best ranked schools in the world, does not match the demographics of Tucson. It's absolutely incorrect, it does. Number 2, you've been implying all morning that there's a direct correlation between the amount of money you spend and the quality of education. There is no correlation. If there were, Washington, D.C. would have the best education system in the world, and the United States would be second only to Switzerland in our education system. In the state of Arizona, if you look at school district by school district, there's no correlation in money spent and results gotten out. You did begin to touch on the key factors, which are the quality of the administration, the quality of the teachers, right, the quality of the expectation. Those are the key issues. You don't just throw money at this problem and expect it to be solved. Now, what was your question?
Is our education system fair enough? No. And this is, the whole point of this is to have a holistic conversation. Is our education system preparing students for 21st century jobs?
If the 21st century is a century of innovation and IT and biotech and all that good stuff, and then you go and look at our universities and schools of engineering, schools of science, and you see that they're mostly populated by foreign nationals, you have to pretty much conclude that we're not doing a good job in K12 getting kids capable and interested in pursuing those topics in the university level. So the answer is obviously no, we're not. And state of Arizona does not a particularly good job in this space. I mean, we're one of the lowest % of post-secondary degree states in the U.S., so college graduates. So you have to conclude, no, the U.S. is not doing a good job, period.
What would you be doing? When would you like to see this get started? Do you think this interest in sort of the science, the technology, do we need to start it earlier? Is that the issue?
You know, today's a very interesting discussion But these discussions have been going on for 60 years, and we've talked about the same topics for 60 years, from pursuit of excellence to nation at risk before it's too late, rising above the gathering storm. Council on Foreign Relations just did a report last year. They've all concluded exactly the same thing. You need to start early. You need to get kids with good teachers and high expectations in math and the sciences and reading and comprehension. There's absolutely nothing new that's been said today. We just haven't done any of the things we've said we need to do for the last 60 years.
Red, what do you say to this? Are you finding that Arizona is providing the worker you need?
Well, we're finding gaps right now that we're working to close, just very specific about our industry and our needs in earth sciences, mining engineers, metallurgical engineers, and our business is improving, which is a good sign for upcoming young people that want, that would like to pursue good careers, great salaries, great benefits. So we're trying to get into, not only the universities and close gaps here, but also in the K through 12, help with STEM programs that increase interest in those kinds of things. So we see it as something that we can improve going forward. We have great employees today. So they came out of these school systems. We're proud of them and what they do, and we always think we can do better.
Eileen, what is it that you feel like the universities here would like to see come out of the K through 12 to help with what the universities are offering?
Well, definitely the success of the universities depends on having well-prepared K-12 students, but I think we should step back and appreciate that Arizona, all of Arizona, and particularly the elected leadership of the state, took the most recent downturn as a call to action. Arizona was one of the hardest hit by the downturn. We had a 40% budget deficit, and the elected leadership of this state, and with the support of the people, took this as an opportunity to reposition our state in economic development, to make sure that people had quality jobs, and they knew that an underlying factor to that would be a successful education system. So 3 years ago, our state created a statewide plan. For the first time, we've unified our goals from preschool to university. We still have work to do in terms of the amount of funding, but we've also started to reposition our funding so that it rewards the outcomes that we need so we can produce graduates. And all of it hinges on making sure we have more graduates. You said the statistics yourself that if you made it through the downturn with a job, it's probably because you had a college degree. So while maybe not everybody's going to go to college, it is imperative that everybody get a higher level of education.
Any
for the
higher
future.
level, you performed above the national or below, the unemployment
Absolutely,
rate
and the
national.
jobs of the future, the job market of the future, 2/3 of the jobs of the future are going to require some level of college attainment or attainment of an educational level beyond high school. So our state, to their credit, it's not perfect, but they've taken this as a call to action, and they're putting reforms in place at all levels to make sure we can increase the graduates and make sure that every kid has an opportunity, no matter where they live, no matter where their household, what their income of their household, no matter their background, that they can succeed.
Mike, how many, at Honeywell, how many of these jobs that you're creating, you're finding you have to go outside the state of Arizona?
Well, we're able to find a lot of talented graduates with STEM backgrounds coming out of our schools here. We've hired about 400 engineers and scientists, for example, out of Arizona State and U of A in the last 5 years. It's a question of quality and quantity both. I think the quality is there if we get the kids that are coming out of high school that have an interest in these careers, an interest in this education. We're able to get very well-prepared students coming out of our schools here in Arizona. I think we have great university programs. I think we have great secondary ed programs, and I think the teachers and the system that we have is capable of producing really high-quality students. But it is a question of numbers. We have an awful lot of engineers in our organization that are within 10 or 15 years of retirement. So we need to have a pipeline filled so that we can continue the innovation that really distinguishes not just Honeywell, but our whole country. Technology is directly related to productivity, is directly related to GDP and standard of living. We all know that. We need to get more kids interested in these programs early so that they can be prepared as they come through the elementary school programs so that when they do go to university, if they choose to be engineers, they can be successful.
One of the things I've wondered, and Craig, I wonder, do you think we should see Intel high schools, Honeywell high schools? You see where I'm getting at here, where sort of you guys are throwing in the investment and deciding this is the curricula we'd like to see used, and you know what, we're going to throw some money into it. Is that feasible? Should it be done?
Well, you could do that, except I'm chair of BASIS, so
you're going to put it in BASIS. Fair enough. Yeah. But you see where I'm getting at here.
No, but a company like Intel or Freeport or Honeywell, Intel puts about $100 million a year into education philanthropically, and come here in another few days and you're going to see the International Science and Engineering Fair. There are going to be 1,500 kids from around the world. Just a few blocks from here are going to be the geekiest geeks you've ever seen, and the energy and enthusiasm with those kids is fantastic. So I think corporate America, whether it's the people you have up here or the IBMs, the Microsofts, whoever they are putting their money behind this. But our challenge is to get more kids interested in math and science and engineering. And that goes way back to your previous conversations today. It goes back through K through 6. Right. If the kids don't get math by the 6th grade,
well, it's funny you say this. Let me stop you here. You know, I'm the move on when reading. Should we have a move on when adding? Move on when multiplying? Move on when, no,
but if you looked at the programs that Eileen was explaining, move on when reading, kids reading at 3rd grade level is important.
Right.
But there's a parallel program, which is kids by the 8th grade should be proficient in reading, math, and science.
Right.
Then there's a program, let's knock the dropout rate down. Makes education relevant in high school for kids, whether that's tech ed, vocational ed, or college prep work. Get it there. And then increase the number of baccalaureate degrees in our post-secondary schools. So there's really 4 pillars in Arizona, not just the one 3rd grade reading pillar.
Right. I mean, is this not enough emphasis, Red, in this K through 5 on math and science? I mean, look, I see it in my own kids in my own public schools in Virginia.
Yes, and we're working to facilitate more interest in these variety of STEM programs that are being implemented here in the state. We're participating heavily in that, and we think that's key, no question.
Eileen, what is there something that's missing? Do you want to see more private companies helping with the curriculum? I mean, I've wondered always, is there just sort of a knowledge gap of where they're just, the teachers aren't quite, we don't have enough math and science teachers that are truly trained in the math and sciences that the Intels, the Honeywells
And I think that's a big opportunity that Common Core provides. That Common Core really is a response to the business community and to others who realize that we need our children to have a higher level of skills when they come out of school, with particular emphasis on analytical thinking, problem solving, and an emphasis on these technical areas, and an emphasis on mathematics. And so Common Core is going to begin to reorient our system toward that. We can't make it without the partnerships. Our businesses are incredible partners. They're important partners at the university level. So the universities want to be sure that our graduates can get jobs in companies. So we have partnerships, in fact, with the 2 companies that are on the stage. Arizona State University has a very tight partnership with Intel, and University of Arizona School of Mines works very closely with mines throughout the state to make sure that the graduates don't just have the foundations academically, but that they have the technical skills and some experience by the time that they leave the workforce. So to be clear, there's more that can be done in terms of certification in technical areas, but this realignment of emphasis and awareness is already paying off, and we're seeing, with the help of our company partners, a reach earlier and earlier into the K-12 system to get kids excited about these opportunities.
This whole move on when ready part, I did with move on when reading, move on when ready, it strikes me, are we going to see this in post-secondary as well, where it's sort of the idea of the 4-year college degree, that's obsolete? It's basically when you've got your skills, you've got your skills.
Well, I don't know that we're going to see a change in the fundamental architecture of what represents an engineering degree or a science or a mathematics degree. I want to come back to what you said earlier, though. I think, first of all, I think our teachers throughout the K through 12 system and in the universities are incredibly engaged in driving this. They're capable, and there's a lot of incredible folks in that system. What we try to do at Honeywell is give those teachers the tools they need to specifically spark the interest in and teach science and mathematics education. One of the things that, you know, when I grew up in the 60s and the 70s, and the Apollo program was what got me interested in it. Right. And so it's not always about a specific rubric or some sort of technique, but it's about how do you get kids interested in a lifelong desire to learn science. The Educators at Space Academy program, we've had 100 teachers just from Arizona go through that program They go for a week to the Space Academy in Huntsville, and they get hands-on experience on how to teach science in a way that's really relevant for kids in the schools.
Hey, I'm just curious, we go into the space program. I was a space junkie as a kid, and you watched all this stuff, and I remember the first Challenger launch, and it was so exciting, and now without it, do you think that that is just that missing piece right now hurts your ability to make it cool and attract younger kids?
There's no question that Sputnik was a stimulus for math and science in the U.S. It was part of the Cold War and defeat the Russians, so it's a big driving force, and we do miss that. I mean, NASA's out of the manned lift program. Sure. NASA still does some great stuff, but
the gee whiz is missing, right?
Well, can you imagine Kennedy coming back now and looking and seeing that the U.S. is paying $70 million to send a U.S. astronaut up on a Russian Soyuz rocket? I mean, he would be just rolling in his grave.
And that's, I mean, that missing piece. But I also wonder if it missed the enthusiasm that it does fire kids.
Well, I think there's other things that have substitute for it, though. There's technology all around us. It's not just the space program. Right. You know, you think about, we all carry computers in our smartphones now. The days are gone when there was a technology economy and the rest of the economy. It's a technology economy. I don't care if you're doing mining, aerospace equipment, you know, circuit cards, blue-collar jobs, white-collar jobs. You have to have a fluency in technology. That's why this Common Core initiative, I think, is so critical, because if the kids have that grounding, not just in reading, but in math and science, if there's a fundamental set of metrics that we know that students are able to achieve that, then they really do have a choice when they get to the university program about whether they want to go this way or that way.
I want to expand out. Kim, I know you've got somebody, special guest with you.
I have Dr. Virginia Corder. She's been an educator for 35 years, and she has a question for the panelists.
One of the challenges that face high school teachers today and administrators is to get the expertise in the 21st century skills that you need in the business world. And the one gentleman just pointed out that they do an internship with teachers in the summer with some of them. But the private industry can afford to pay top dollar for a lot of these experts. The schools cannot. What kinds of solutions might you have or offer us so that more people can come to us, your expertise people working inside the schools, to help our kids prepare for the future?
Who wants to jump in on that?
Yeah, I will. We have a variety of programs, Minerals Make Life, other things like that that we've made available to school systems. We'd sure want to make sure that your school system's benefiting from those kinds of things. We'll have practical people from our operations come speak. If you'd like to do that, we're happy to do tours of classes to our operations if that's possible. We're trying to do all kinds of things like that to interact with the schools, and the younger the better. We've got a little thing where we actually make a little mine out of a chocolate chip cookie, and the chocolate chips are the ore, and the kids dig out the chocolate chips and hydrate them. And
that's kind of mining I like. Yeah,
we'd like.
Who's that going to be for that? Yeah. Eileen, what about offering technical programs at the university level that isn't, you know, the idea of 2-year extra degree, but like almost like a 6-week or 12-week intensive course that the teacher might want to take?
That's becoming a bigger area of focus for us, and we're looking at ways that we can do almost immediate transfer of knowledge so that people then can get back out into the workforce. And clearly people today will have multiple careers during their lifetime, so we can expect that they're going to need to be retrained.
Well, I think about computer programming, Craig, right now, and what's being taught in high school. How many of those teachers know about app programming, things like that?
You know, there are a lot of simple things you could do. Those in the audience who know about the first robotics competition, which is a nationwide event. But, you know, nearly every school in Arizona has a football team. Less than 10% of the high schools have a robotics team. It's not supported by the school budget. It has to be supported externally. You want to get kids interested in tech, whether it's computer programming, building something, competing. These kids get incredibly enthusiastic. Let's get a robotics team in every high school in Arizona as a start.
That would be good. Patricia, what do you have over there?
Thank you, Chad. I'm here with Sarah Sullivan. She's an educator in Arizona. She's an arts teacher, and your question is, Sarah?
So we hear a lot about STEM education these days, which is really exciting, but I also believe that creativity and innovation is a really vital part of the jobs that are being created right now, the jobs that are out there right now. I'm curious what you think the role of arts education can play, both in supporting STEM curriculum and in building the absolutely vital creativity and innovation we need for the future workforce.
Go ahead.
I think it's a great question. One of the things that we see at Honeywell is we have wonderful technology, but how do we make it relevant? If you think about the cockpit in an airplane, how do you make it from a human factors perspective something that people can relate to and work with very easily? And this is actually an area that for engineers and for an engineering-centric organization is actually somewhat hard to do. You need folks that think about it from a human psychology perspective and an interaction perspective. We learned this in computers a long time ago. We used to use DOS commands, and now we have mouses and graphical interfaces. So I actually think, and we're starting to realize, that the engagement of people with these diverse backgrounds, educationally diverse backgrounds, actually is very, very important in driving innovation in this technology space. So it's not compartmentalized. It really does require those skills. And so I would say it's very relevant.
And math and music.
Well, yeah. Math and music, but I think if you go to places like ASU now and look at what's going on, both Laddie Kaur, the previous president, Michael Crow today, have been pushing very hard for interdisciplinary issues. And that is cross-training people from biology to engineering to the liberal arts and getting that collective view into solving problems and getting the human factor involved. It's very important. I don't think anybody's up here saying every kid ought to be a STEM major.
We're not talking about the German model of the pathway.
Well, yeah. The Germans do pretty good, but let's pick on somebody else.
Fair enough. Yeah,
but the best advice I ever give my grandkids when they say, what should I major in? I say, major in the subject that really turns you on. And if you master that subject and you're good at it, there'll be a place for you in the world, whether you're a physician, a physicist, a poet, whatever you end up being. Do something you really love. You're going to do it for 45 years. So don't be an engineer just because, Craig Barrett said be an engineer. But if it turns you on, cool. If a teacher in third grade turns you on to engineering, that's cool. But the kids ought to do what they enjoy doing, and there'll be a place for them. The world always accepts talent with open arms. I read that in a fortune cookie someplace.
Go ahead, Red. Yeah.
I'd also like to encourage it to the extent that you can. Have the children work in teams, in groups where they're interacting and working on things together. And at least in our industry, that's where a lot of the creativity and new things come from. It's rarely someone sitting alone in a cube somewhere, but somebody interacting with all the challenges and things that we're faced with of the day. That's where innovation comes.
And Eileen, I'm sure you've seen
robotics team.
Yeah. I love this robotics team. There it is. And Eileen, I'm sure you've seen plenty of studies that show your more successful students the ones that had more of a rounded curriculum.
Absolutely, and we hear that from business all the time, that what they're looking for is that T-shaped individual who has lots of skills, and that's one of the thoughts behind the interdisciplinary approach that Craig described. The important thing is for people to get a degree, to get more education. So it's hard to contemplate for us at the university system that there'll be a day where we will do away with electives, because that's where so much of that creativity and innovative possibility comes from. So for us, it's very important that we have very well-rounded individuals, not just for the point of having a career, but really to be a whole person and to really contribute to our society.
I want to change the conversation a little bit to job creation. And when you guys are, three of you here, build businesses and you're looking for places and you pick a community, what is it that you are going to be, what is it that you look for in an educational system that says, I mean, what are the different factors? Where does an local education system fit in the factor of you moving your company to a city? Go ahead, Craig.
You got three things. If you're going to move a facility, Intel's got 11,000 people down in Chandler and billions of dollars in the ground. You want to build a facility nearby a quality university for access to the professors and the students. You want to be able to have the entire workforce well educated. That means K12 and everybody coming up. And you want to be able to attract people from outside the state who have children who are worried about the schools their children are going to go to.
So it's a marketing thing for a
future
employee.
So you need to take 1, 2, and 3 and factor all of them in when you're making a decision.
Red, have you ever rejected a place going because you thought, boy, that school system, not up to snuff?
Well, ours is unique in that
you have to go where the minerals are.
Communities are where the minerals are, but we work very hard to make sure that there's excellent quality education in those communities where we live and work. Again, just like Craig mentioned, to attract people and to have them want to live and work there.
Mike, you've ever rejected a community because you thought, boy, they don't have the educational system that's going to make this work?
Yeah, I would say we haven't rejected it, but I would agree with what Craig said, which is especially our engineers. One of the first things they look at when they come to Phoenix or any community that we're located in is they say, how good is the school system? They do the research, they do the math, they look at the teachers, they go talk to folks, they sit in the classrooms. They really do their homework. And so, you know, our ability to attract employees is directly related to everything that Craig said. And I think that's, you know, we sometimes think that we're just producing students. We're actually a recruitment tool when we do well in the schools.
And speaking of recruiting, Eileen, you need these companies to make somebody say, oh, I'm going to go to university, I'm going to go down to Tucson, or I'm going to go to Arizona State because I have a good job that I could get in 4 years.
Absolutely, and companies want to be near universities for multiple reasons, not the least of which is obviously because there's talent nearby who can work for them, but also because they want access to that intellectual powerhouse that a university provides so that they have a chance to work closely, side by side, to collaborate, to potentially create new thinking, discovery. I mean, so it's not just that universities are imparting knowledge, they're creating knowledge, and they're doing that in very close partnerships. So I think when you look at Arizona as a whole, what the state has tried to do is really reposition to make sure that we are very attractive to companies, that Arizona's positioned to be the major growth corridor for the western United States, so we want to be sure that we really have the climate economically that makes us a very viable location. That includes, you know, low taxes and low regulation, to be sure, but we can't get there without a very strong K-12 and a very strong university system.
Go ahead, Craig, you wanted to jump in?
There's a different aspect of this. You're talking about big companies coming and put a plant in and hire thousands of people. The real growth comes out of the individual entrepreneurs. Right. And Silicon Valley and Route 128, the two really hot spots of entrepreneurship in the U.S. in past history, were built around major universities, research universities, Stanford and Berkeley and Silicon Valley, MIT and Harvard, Route 128. That's what Arizona needs, and we're making progress with the U of A, NAU, and ASU. But key to this state's growing will be 3 top-tier research universities here. That spins out the ideas, it spins out the students, it spins out the professors, it spins out wealth.
And with wealth, the education system.
Well, wealth creation is kind of not usually stated as the driving force for a university, but they are centers of wealth creation. They educate people and they spin out ideas for products and companies and services. So it's absolutely key to Arizona to have absolutely top-tier universities if we want to have a vibrant economy going forward.
And Mike, when you look at what is it that, when you look at these issues of business attraction, is there anything here that you would say to the state superintendent of public instruction, somebody I had on here earlier, like, you know what, really focus on this, it will really help?
The number one thing is preparing students early. I think the universities, when we get students that come out of the K-12 program that want to go into these fields, do a wonderful job of preparing them. I meet frequently with the folks over at Arizona State University. I would say that we provide feedback on the university system. It's a very, very good system. We get wonderful graduates there. The key is we want to have those kids have the ability to make a choice when they graduate from high school. It really starts in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. So I would just say, you know, we've got to keep kids from falling behind early. That's the number one.
Right, I want to pause the conversation because we're going to pick up here. We've got the 12 News Live television audience is going to be joining us here in a second. So everybody, if you could remain in your seats, give a little pause. We're going to do a little television animation. Welcome to NBC News Education Nation here in Phoenix. Thank you for joining us for a panel we're calling Job One. It's an important conversation about Arizona's workforce, the skills gap, the future of the economy here in the state. We're broadcasting live on 12 News from the Herberger Theater Center here, and you can join the conversation right now on Twitter at #EducationNation or on Facebook at facebook.com/EducationNation. Here with me on stage are Craig Barrett. He's the former CEO and chairman of the board of the Intel Corporation. Red Conger, president of the Americas for Freeport McMoran. Eileen Klein, president of the Arizona Board of Regents, and Mike Madson, president of the Defense and Space Honeywell Aerospace. Thank you all. I want to talk about the public-private partnership. These are the things in improving K-12 education that's working the best these days all around the country. When you see these public-private partnerships, what are some of the best practices, Craig, I want to start with you, that you'd like to see duplicated on a bigger scale here in Arizona?
Well, I gave you one already, which is that I'd like to see something like a robotics team in every high school. And that's a great opportunity for the private sector to come in and help fund that activity.
And this is a robotics team, just like the football team,
just like
the
a football team.
Yeah.
But and these kids are in competition with each other, and they're in intense competition. That sort of thing. I think the major corporations can do more in terms of fostering interest in math and science and their topics. We talked a little bit earlier about the International Science and Engineering Fair, which will be here in Phoenix. That's a great public-private partnership. Science Talent Search, a similar one which is running throughout the United States.
Is this something where you imagine, Mike, Mike, Craig, and Red, that you guys would invest money in funding these teams, funding the robotics team, funding these teams? We know, look, state government only has so much money. We've talked about that earlier. Would that be something that you could see?
I think it is money, but it's also human capital, you know, because we have folks in our companies who were those kids 10 or 20 or 25 years ago. So the outreach, the ability to help lead these teams, to actually help get them formed, to work with the kids directly. One of the things that we find is the most rewarding for our employees, and also that we hear back from our university graduates is, you know, one of your employees mentored me. Or one of your employees came and talked to my school about what it means to be an engineer. Or we had an open house at our campus and the students came and saw it. So I think there's actually, it's not just about money, it's also about directly engaging. And
they'd be the coaches, basically. Your employees should be the coaches of these teams. Yeah, you know, if we're going to do this. Eileen, what about the partnership between K-12 and the university system?
It's one that we have a new opportunity around because of the creation of Arizona Ready, so that the K-12 system, preschool, and university can all sit together and think about how we can drive better outcomes. And there is a good representation of the business community as well, so we can make sure that our goals are aligned, that we're going to be addressing key things like getting kids to read by 3rd grade, getting kids to graduate. Today, sadly, only 2/3 of our kids graduate from high school, and then to really create a climate statewide of this expectation that kids need to be ready for college or a career by the time they're done with school.
And Red, we want to improve this skills gap. You in particular, you have a specialty field. This is mining. So,
but we're very supportive in general of science, technology, engineering, math. I'll give you one example we're participating in is 100K in 10, which is a nationwide effort to have 100,000 teachers well prepared in STEM education over the next 10 years, so we're taking a long view. Quite frankly, we've never seen a program yet that wasn't good around STEM. The music one is very creative, so we're participating in a myriad of those kinds of things. I think they're all going to make a difference.
All right, I got two colleagues here from 12 News. Kim, I want to go to you, and this is going to be focusing a little bit on the the growing Hispanic population and that skills gap that also we see with Hispanics.
We talked earlier about the achievement gap between Latinos and whites, and you also see that in the skills gap. I'm with Senator Chuck Gallardo, and you mentioned, or Steve Gallardo actually, and you said that a lot of people have questions about how can the business community provide more job opportunities for the Hispanic community.
Oh, definitely. But I think it goes back to taking our public education, or education in a whole here in Arizona, much more seriously. I mean, as mentioned before, our political rhetoric is way up here, our actions are way down here. We need, and granted, funding is not the whole all, but it's a big part. And we have to make sure that our schools have the funding in order to properly give the education to kids within the Latino community. And those are the areas that are suffering the most. And you look at those communities that are facing with a lot of social problems, a lot of housing problems. Those are the areas that need the help the most. So I think education and funding are key parts. You look in the state of Arizona, we have cut $2.9 million over the last 4 years in education cuts here in the state of Arizona, $2.9 million. And we have yet here in the state of Arizona to be able to provide the funding to some of our schools to do a robotics team. We should not have to pick and choose what we do at our schools. We should be able to provide a robotics team, but it takes funding.
So how can the business community help?
Oh, continue to work with our schools. Let's work together to create a curriculum that will help move these kids into some of your businesses. I really think working with the school districts to provide more counselors. I think every student should have an action plan, but it takes a counselor. And when you have a school and 700 students per one counselor, that's a challenge. So I think that it goes back to funding. I think it goes back to working with the business community to create a curriculum that fits what they're looking for, and I think we can add additional jobs.
So let's talk about that. I want to get to the panel and respond. This issue of the Hispanic Skills Gap, Hispanic Achievement Gap here in Arizona. How do we close it? How do you guys here, is there a way that the private sector can help with this issue? Red?
Well, we're growing. Roughly half of our employees here in Arizona are Hispanic. We're proud of that. You know, we're working to, like I said, educate people in school. My sister-in-law, for example, is a English as a second language teacher. You know, I'm investing personally and professionally in all of this. So, you know, we just see Arizona as this, you know, wonderful mix of all kinds of people, and you know, lots of great Hispanic employees at our operations, and we see great students coming up that we'd like to come work with us as well. So we're just going to keep working with you.
You know, I think if you look around, there are a lot of programs. It's going to start back with the Arizona State Common Core, which is raising expectations, and that's standards. That's not curriculum. That's the standards of expectation that you know. Programs like all three of us run here, which are to get kids interested in math and science through competitions or after-school activities, providing internships to kids. I'm not so sure that corporations should be that involved in the curriculum in K-12. I think we should be involved at the community college level, which is more as career training, but there are good JTED programs and career and tech ed programs where the private sector is playing with the public sector. So I think these things are happening. Do they need to be expanded? Absolutely yes. And you know, could we use more resources? You know, I was a skunk earlier and I said there's no correlation. Yeah, we could use more resources in this state for sure. But let's make sure that we are spending the money that we have in the most effective way possible.
No, you brought up Washington, D.C., and it's a classic problem. We've thrown all this money there, and the results aren't there. The results aren't there. All the good schools are in the suburbs, and you sit there, what's going on here? So it's how you spend the money.
45% of the kids in D.C. are now in charter schools. They have left the public sector.
So I want to bring in, you brought up community colleges. You actually helped me with a segue. You have no idea. As you know, the largest, I think one of the largest community college systems in the country is Maricopa Community College. Maricopa stepping up some efforts to address the skills gap. So Patricia, you have more on that with our special guest here.
Yes, thank you, Chuck. I am here with Jean Giovannini, Dr. Jean Giovannini, who is the new incoming president of this newly created Maricopa Corporate College. Tell us, Doctor, why was this school created?
Sure, but thank you, Craig. With 260,000 students, the Maricopa Community College District has more students than all the colleges and universities in the entire state. Thus, is the major workforce provider in the state in areas of health and engineering and technology and as well as transferring students to the university, and thousands of them each year that do as well or better than Native students. What we recognized in working with industry in our partnerships is that the skills gap related to incumbent workers, workers that are already in the workforce, or workers that are entering in the workforce that need orientation or training into the specific job. So we've created, beginning July 1, the Maricopa Corporate College. And the Maricopa Corporate College will work specifically with entities, businesses, school districts, trade associations, to address the contract training needs, customized training, continuing education needs, business consulting services. And we found, although we're not open yet, I'm fielding calls already, across the board, from the service industries, the insurance industry wants an insurance institute. I talked to a power engineering firm that wants to take engineers in other areas, aerospace or electrical, and make them power engineers. So from the gamut of the lowest level skills to the highest level skills. In addition, we are hoping to capitalize on what we have built at Gateway Community College, where I'm the president now, will be leaving, to assume this role. We built the Center for Entrepreneurial Innovation, which is an incubator, full service incubator, that will be full by the end of the year, and we've been open about 8 months. And the intent there, obviously, is to help people create their own jobs, and therefore those people create jobs from the businesses that they've created. Chatting with the Mayor Stanton in the hallway a little earlier, looking at partnering with the City of Phoenix and creating another incubator. They were the partner with the CEI at the Gateway campus.
You know, Mike, it seems community college, when I look at it, and this was my experience at Miami-Dade, now it's a college, but it was a community college. This has been the gateway, the class, moving up the ladder. Community college.
It is really critical. We have a tendency to think in terms of STEM as just scientists and engineers. But the fact is that the majority of our technical needs are around our technologists and our technicians, the folks that assemble, test, manufacture our products. Manufacturing technology is really critically important to us. And so recruiting students who have those skills, in addition to the four-year degree students and the folks who have the science and engineering backgrounds, they're both very, very important. And there's something else you said in there around the ongoing education. Look, the pace of change is accelerating. And we either have a choice, you know, we can either be part of that or not. I think it was General Shinseki that said, if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. That's absolutely true. And it isn't easy, but this constant reinvention of who we are as employees and as a corporation it's part of the reality of the world we live in.
And Eileen, the entire university education system is reinventing itself. I mean, what he's just describing there.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is, you know, universities now are going to be expected to provide all sorts of different post-secondary training, and it's not, maybe it's a 6-week degree.
It may be.
Right, a technical
it may be. But our community colleges are key partners to being able to create more degrees. So when we talk about overcoming these achievement gaps, I mean, it certainly starts with understanding that every child in this state can learn and every child can achieve these goals we want. We want them all to have a great teacher, and we want them all to be on a path to college. But when they get there, we also have to make sure that they have the financial aid resources to be able to do that, because our income challenges in this state are still quite a barrier to being able to access whether it's community college or university. And so we really need to continue to work with our state leaders to make sure that we at some point create a state financial aid system so that people aren't locked out of a higher education.
Is it fair to say, and Craig, you were just bringing this up at Red, that you know, you're going to want, you might go ahead and ask a community college, I need you to teach this specific class because I've got 200 students that are going to be coming because, oh, by the way, they're my employees.
Yes, we've done that. Yavapai Community College north of here has a occupational training program for craft people. We fund that, and we receive somewhere around 15 candidate students a year that graduate from that and come to work in our operation. So that's one example of us doing something very specific just for our industry.
Craig, I'll give you the last word and then I'm going to go to break.
Maricopa Community College system has been great in this respect, not just recently, but when I first came to Arizona back in the mid-'80s, very strong relationship between Intel and the courses taught there to provide technical talent to come work within Intel. So they have a very long and very positive history in this respect.
Yeah, community college, very nimble. Very nimble. Anyway, I want to thank you. I want to thank this group of panelists, Craig Barrett, Red Conger, Eileen Klein, Mike Madson. We're going to take a short commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to some political leaders here, a conversation I'm going to have with 3 mayors from across the state. You can applause now. Applaud now.